shall I render to the Lord for all his bounty to me?
So Pascha. Welcome to Veiled in Grace. I'm Kyra.
And I'm Anna. We are both Orthodox Christians.
And we're here to talk about what it's like to be Orthodox.
I forgot to say cradle Orthodox.
We can't forget the cradle.
Yes.
To Veiled in Grace. Hi, welcome to Veiled in Grace.
Cradle from the cradle.
From the cradle.
Cradle
There's-
Orthodox Christian.
We are both cradle Orthodox Christian.
Cradle is
Got the real.
Excuse me.
Welcome to Veiled in Grace.
Very important.
It's very important.
We are cradle Orthodox Christians
And we're here to talk about what it's like being Orthodox women.
in a very non-Orthodox world.
And today we are going to set the scene and talk a little bit about what it's like preparing and leading up to the Feast of Feasts, which is Pascha. When this video is coming out, we will probably be mid Holy Week. So we'll be in the thick of it. But it's a really beautiful time to prepare our hearts and prepare our families for the resurrection of Christ. And it's a beautiful thing to experience, but it can be very overwhelming if you are a parent with young children, or even if you are a person that has never experienced this before. If Pascha and Holy Week is brand new to you and the concept of church every day, multiple times a day, that can be really intimidating. So I think we want to walk everyone through what it's like leading up to Pascha and maybe share some of our own experiences with our families and our children over the years and give some hopefully helpful tips and tricks.
Right. So how do we bring our children into Holy Week and Pascha with all that it has to offer?
Yeah, and we've talked about children in the church before, but this is a different dynamic.
And a different level.
Yes.
So if you are not familiar with the term Pascha, it means Passover in Greek. And so Christ is the new Passover, out with the old, in with the new. And so it's Easter. Some jurisdictions still use the Easter term, but Pascha is the typical Orthodox term for Easter in the Orthodox Church.
And my children often use it interchangeably.
Right. And we have obviously non-Orthodox family too, so they know there's Easter, which they could celebrate, and Pascha. So they get 2 times. So having said that, our Pascha typically is a different date from Western Easter. We are usually after Western Easter, or it's the same day, but we're never before Western Easter. So sometimes
that's a calculation thing.
Yes,
You
which
can
we're not
look-
going to
you
get
can
into
look that
because
up.
it's highly debatable.
Talk to your priest.
And 10 different priests will probably say 10 different
Yeah.
things. So, so we've actually had non-Orthodox come on our Palm Sunday thinking it was Easter, and they're like, "Oh, you're not celebrating Easter yet? Okay."
But welcome to Palm Sunday.
Yes, you get it twice.
Yeah. Which I guess the start of the end, the start of leading up to Pascha probably starts with Lazarus Saturday, which is the day before Palm Sunday. And it's kind of what starts the Holy Week cycle. Is on Saturday we celebrate and remember Lazarus being raised from the dead. A lot of churches will have baptisms on that day, which is really exciting. My children always, I look forward to it every year because we often have baptisms on Lazarus Saturday. And then it flows into Palm Sunday.
Yes, so Palm Sunday, in the Orthodox Church, everyone gets palms, but in the northern areas where we live, we get pussy willows, because that's what is in season for us in April. So we have those as our palms. Again, that's emphasizing that you do what is your local tradition. And so that's why there's lots of variations in Orthodoxy, because it's worldwide and there's lots of different seasons and temperatures and, types of plants. And
Yeah.
so a fun tradition that I know my kids always look forward to on Palm Sunday is taking the leaf from the pussy willows and making little crosses out of them. So they have like little tiny mini crosses they make.
That we find throughout the church the entire year.
Yeah. Or big ones. And then they pass them out to everybody.
Yeah.
So everybody kind of can get one. And they're nice because you can like just kind of put them up in your icons or in your car. I have even my mother-in-law, she'll ask me to get palms if she's not able to make it. And so it is a nice thing just to have with you for the year, remembering Palm Sunday. If you are like, what is Palm Sunday? I realized you might not even know what that is if you're listening. So it's the day that we remember Jesus entering Jerusalem, and the people laid down palms so that way dust wouldn't fly up when he is walking with his donkey into Jerusalem, and they were waving them because he was to be the king. They weren't quite sure what kind of king, but they knew a king.
Yeah, which really lays the foundation for Holy Week following Lazarus Saturday, in that Palm Sunday and into Holy Week is where we begin to follow Christ on his journey and on the walk leading up to his resurrection, which is beautiful because a lot of churches, they put such an emphasis on Christ rising from the dead, which is really important. Can't forget that. It is the feast of feast, but it's as if you're like dismissing the rest of his life that happened before that and the things that he encountered and what he walked through,
especially in those final days.
Yeah, especially in the final days, and it really puts you almost into his shoes when you are mourning things that happened and you're experiencing in the church and praying and reading about the things that had happened to him leading up to that.
It makes Pascha that much more
meaningful,
celebratory, exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's like so joyful because you've walked the walk the best you know how. So yeah, on Palm Sunday, then usually that evening starts the Bridegroom matins. And so that would be like Sunday evening, Monday evening, and Tuesday evening.
That's where it gets intense with children. Palm Sunday, it's like a kind of joyful, normal Sunday with kids. And the Bridegroom matins are long, beautiful.
Very beautiful.
But long. And a lot for families.
It's at that hour of day when your children are crazy.
Yes, usually late at night.
So the Bridegroom matins is a more solemn time. The service is definitely, like Palm Sunday is very exciting and joyful because Christ has entered Jerusalem. And then it's almost like reality is setting in. And so it's a waiting time for Jesus Christ, the bridegroom. And so the services are definitely more solemn, but still very beautiful. And they get more solemn as the week goes on.
And long.
and long. And so they can be very challenging for children. I think also because it is kind of solemn and like more quiet, I felt like my children were always like just wild. So I would bring them in there when they were young. I would bring them in their pajamas, and I don't think we ever made it to the end. We would stay until it was close to bedtime, and then we would just get in the car and everybody fall asleep on the way home. Just for everyone's sanity.
Yeah.
And honestly, probably only brought them to one of the 3 Bridegroom matin services, just because it's a lot for young children. So sometimes my husband and I would trade off. Either one person would stay home and then the other one would come so they could actually
It depends on how your children are too. Like, I find that there's definitely benefit in bringing your children to Holy Week services. I think you should most definitely bring your children, but you need to find the like happy medium for your family. You can speak to your priest, obviously. That is a great place to start. But we had a very similar kind of dynamic. I think when we had only one child, we would just bring him in his PJs and we would come every night. And whenever he was like done, we would just leave. This was when he was to the point of like wanting to run around and not sleeping in a carrier. Honestly, I think that babies are very easy because I baby wore in carriers, and I know you did too, and my kids would just like fall asleep. So that wasn't as difficult, but
it's once they're toddlers.
Yeah, once we had one and he was toddler-ish age, then it was like we would come, and when it was too much, we would leave. And then I think we tried the same thing when we had two that were almost both under 2. And that was also really rough. And then by the time that we got to 3 children, we were like, this is not going to happen. And so we've shifted and we've kind of started, and even at the beginning of Lent, we do a similar thing where like my husband would come one night, I would come another night, and then we bring our children another night, because it would we'd space out the days that our kids were in church, so that for them it was almost like every other day they were going to church instead of every day for the entire week. But we also, as the parents, had like an opportunity to breathe and listen to the prayers. It's amazing.
Right. Actually pray.
What you can hear and see and smell and experience when you aren't tending to your children, which is a blessing. But
so it's not a bad thing to leave them at home one of the services so you can.
Which I remember whenever, I think it was whenever I had 2 kids and I was like struggling because we were like, we did it last year. We can come to church. And I remember talking to you about it, and you were like, sometimes you just can't bring your kids to every single service. Like it's a lot for little children. And I'm talking like when they're like 2 and 3 and 4 years old. Once they get to like 5 and 6, they're a lot more resilient than you think they are. But when they're in like peak toddlerhood, they
don't get what's going on, and it just changes their schedule and their sleep, and
it's a lot. So find a healthy dynamic, especially at the beginning of Holy Week, because your children will want to be there and experience things towards the end of Holy Week. Because once we get into, do you want to talk about towards the end of Holy Week some of the services we experience?
Yes. So again, there are usually more than one service in a day, but we'll just kind of hit the major ones. So then we have Holy Thursday, which is usually later in the evening, and we read through the 12 gospel readings of Christ's death. So it can be very long.
There's a common theme here.
To kids, maybe a little boring because it's just a lot more reading. Not as much singing as they might be used to. But my children still love that service. Usually, at least in our church, we'll light candles for each gospel that's read. So depending on your church's tradition, you might have something similar. And so at least the children, they can see that or maybe participate in some way.
One child might be really focused and love being at all of the services, and another might be bouncing off the walls. And as a parent, I've learned, especially with the more children that I have, that forcing yourself to stay in the service just to be there while you have 3 children screaming, and like it's not always worth it.
It's okay to have to leave. Give yourself some grace.
Like, the Lord knows that I'm trying.
Right.
And if trying means that I got them all dressed and I put in the effort to be there for 30 minutes, and for 30 minutes straight, everyone screamed and we decided it was time to go home at 7:30 at night, then that's what it is.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's
and we'll
just
try
a season.
again next year.
It's just a season. Yes. Yeah. And each year your children do get more used to it and they remember it and look forward to it. So it does get better. There is hope. So on Holy Thursday, we are like I said, reading through the gospel readings, which are about the mystical supper, beginning with mystical supper, and then the betrayal of Judas, and then the beginning of the passion and his death. So we work through that in the service. It is such a powerful service because of that.
You're experiencing
Yes.
it almost as if you were there.
Yes. Yeah. And there might be different traditions of how the church is set up for that service. Our current parish, we have Christ on the cross in the center of the church. And then after the service, we take him down and then set up the tomb for Holy Friday. That's a way, if it's not too late for your kids, that they could help set that up also. So little things to help keep your children engaged and part of the services.
And keep in mind, we both homeschool our children, so it's a lot easier for us to attend whatever daytime services we want to, but especially leading into Holy Friday, taking your children out of school is okay. It's if your children are in public school or private school or anywhere that they're going to need an excuse, then ask your priest for an excuse for a religious holiday, because it's important to have your children in church.
Yes.
I'm not saying that school isn't important. School is important, but don't come for me.
Holy Friday is more important.
But Holy Friday is more important.
Yes.
Your children will get more in their life all around by being at church than they will being at school that day. And honestly, it's a talking point, because I grew up going to public school, and when I wasn't going to be there on a Friday and they're like, where are you going to be? Then I could share with people that I wasn't going to be there because I was going to be at church.
Yeah. And then that brings up the conversation. Why is your Easter different? And so
Yeah.
it's an opportunity for evangelism.
Yeah.
And
Naturally.
educating people. So so then we get to Holy and Good Friday, which is when the veneration of the cross and the tomb. Again, some of the, depending on your local parish, traditions can vary on how that looks. I do remember, because our service, I think we have one at 1 a.m, royal hours, and then at like 4 and 6, I think. So usually at the 4:00 one is when all the families come to, because that's...
Ours is usually early and long. So again, like my husband usually takes off work. He will go in the morning, and then we will go in the evening.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot to take your children to church 3 times a day.
Yeah. And you can't expect them to...
Taking them once every day is more than their norm.
So on Friday, I know we would come to the afternoon service, and then in between is when you can break the fast, because in the Orthodox tradition, the next day starts in the evening the day before. So that day has ended on Holy Friday when you should be fasting, a strict fast, and then we usually break the fast in our hall with just a real light meal, and then
Bread.
yeah, and maybe some soup.
We're gonna call
anyone
some
happens to
vegetable
bring.
broth. We're gonna call some vegetable broth and bread a meal,
And it's usually very light.
and a can of beans.
And then everybody goes back over for the third service. And I remember when my children were young, we didn't usually make it through that whole second or third service, because it gets late again and it's bedtime, and you still have like 4 more days of church services after that. So it could be the hardest day, that Friday, for sure, but it's the hardest day.
It's when you're really in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Because Lent is Lenting all the time. And by the time that you are at the end of Holy Week, usually you're struggling because you are bringing yourself to church when you don't always want to be bringing yourself to church, because it's a struggle. And you might be feeling even more spiritually attacked. And then if you have children, it's a whole nother added
layer
of whatever
chaos.
you want to call that. But not to say that people without children don't struggle with it, because bringing yourself to Holy Week, adjusting your work schedule, doing things that you don't want to do, taking your time off just to focus on coming to church, things like that are not easy. So by the time you get to Friday and leading into Saturday, usually we are all walking around
hanging by a thread.
And so is your priest usually.
Yes. And your choir.
So have some grace for them.
Yes.
Because their throats hurt and they're drinking a lot of tea.
And they're tired.
And their feet hurt.
So then that brings us to Holy Saturday, which is, other than Pascha, my favorite service of the year. And it's unfortunately probably the least attended service in most parishes, which is so unfortunate because it's so beautiful and joyful and just, I love it. And my kids love it. And it's very long, but it's Saturday morning and it begins with the 15 Old Testament readings. And so in our parish, everyone in the church who wants to can take a turn reading an Old Testament reading, which is fun because even your children, if they can read, can participate in that. And usually people can sit and it's not like you're standing the whole time. And then the Divine Liturgy begins for Holy Saturday. And that's when we remember, because we have Holy Friday when Jesus dies on the cross. And then oftentimes in other denominations, we go straight. That's it. Then we just jump. He died and then he resurrected. But there's a lot that happens.
There's days there
in between where Christ descends to Hades for 3 days. So we don't want to skip over that. That's
like this icon.
Super important. Yes. So this is the icon of Christ pulling people from the throes of death in Hades. And so he conquers Hades. And so we no longer have to go there.
It's joyful.
So it's very joyful because we all of a sudden switch from the somber Good Friday of his death to he just
conquered
death and broke the gates and chains and freed everyone. So then, we go around singing, and some parishes, they throw greenery and might be playing the kids. This is a tradition that we started with our parish of like the kids can bring like the little music noisemakers during that time to show that you're like, we just conquered death. Christ conquered death and we don't have to be scared of that anymore. And so it's a very joyful, exciting service. Yeah. And then for our tradition, I think it's a Slavic tradition, then we have afterwards like a spiced bread with wine or grape juice, wine and grape juice. So your parish might not do that, but that's something we do in our parish. And I know my kids always look forward to that.
I'm sure they do. What child doesn't?
So
it's this interesting crossover time because you have this somber, like Christ hasn't risen from the dead, but we know what is happening. And you think about the people at that time and they didn't know what was happening, but we know what was happening. So we're celebrating and remembering that because that's an important part of his journey and of our salvation. And without that, things would be completely different.
Yeah. So I know Friday evening, Saturday morning, you're not going to want to go. You're
do it.
Just do it. Pull yourself out of bed and just get
And your
there.
children will do a lot better probably because it's a morning service than at
right.
7:30 at night.
Yeah, they're used to morning services. So
yeah.
It's usually not too big of an issue. I know, like, because it is longer with the extra readings in the beginning, I usually, if my children were real little toddlers, I would have to bring a snack or something to help get them through halfway through that
Yeah.
from breakfast all the way until we're done. So you might need a snack, but otherwise it's pretty normal service for them.
A lot of the services during Holy Week are different than what children normally experience in church. So you'll find that if your children are that age that they're just outside of toddlerhood and they are much more aware of what's going on, they will notice that different things are happening than what usually happens when they're in church, which is exciting for them.
Yeah, so then the rest of the day on Holy Saturday, usually you're spending preparing your Pascha basket, which I forgot to mention. There's like small t tradition to dye your eggs red on Holy Thursday. You don't have to, but it's a small t tradition to do that. And it's actually better if you like space out your food preparation for the week, like each day do something that can be helpful. So if you're able to on Holy Thursday dye your eggs, and that way that's already done. And so,
which we usually dye them naturally with
yellow onion
skins that I tried to remind all of our parishioners to start collecting at the beginning of Lent, so you are not doing like I do during Holy Week and buying bags of onions and peeling them all to have enough skins. But can you share so the eggs that you're dyeing on Holy Thursday are for the midnight Pascha service? Can you talk about why we do that? Like, what's the purpose of
the red egg?
Yeah.
So
the symbolism behind that.
The red egg, there's a beautiful story or a book. I think it's called Miracle of the Red Egg that we can link to. Have you read it?
I don't know if I've read that one. I think there's a couple.
Okay. So it's essentially Mary Magdalene is with, I think, the emperor. Don't quote me on this, but you'll have to read the story.
Someone will, I'm sure.
But someone in the government. And he's not convinced that Christ died and resurrected. So he says something along the lines like, if he did, this egg will turn red. And he's in front of all these people and with Mary Magdalene, and the egg turns red. And he just can't believe it. And everybody's like, oh my gosh. So that's where the tradition of dyeing your eggs red comes from. Saint Mary Magdalene.
All the small traditions that are nice to bring into your family life and into the church.
Yes. Yeah. We don't, oftentimes in Orthodoxy, it looks like we do a bunch of things and it's like with no purpose, but no, everything has a purpose. It might be a super practical purpose that isn't like super theological or spiritual, but it always has some sort of purpose or background or tradition, explaining why we do it. So there's always a good reason, and that's the red egg.
So on Saturday, when we are preparing our Pascha baskets, what are some other traditional things that you
Meat. Meat and cheese.
Butter.
Some other, I think it's more Slavic tradition. So again, it might differ on your culture of your parish or your own ethnic background. But salt, I know, has some sort of meaning. Horseradish.
There's a bunch of different foods that symbolize a bunch of different things. And some people go very traditional and put all of those things in their basket. And some people go very non-traditional and just put all of the things that they've been fasting from and missing that they want to have as their celebratory treat. And some people do a little bit of both. I feel like we do, my family does a little bit of both. Like we're kind of like, I usually cover all of the traditional bases, and then my husband's like, and lamb.
Yeah, right. So, because I think ham might be the traditional thing, but if you don't want ham and you want lamb, one year I wanted a cheeseburger.
Yeah,
that was what was in my cheeseburger. So, just whatever you're really wanting to eat in the middle of the night. So, in most traditions, you'll bless your baskets that night, or in the middle of the night and then eat. So we'll get there. But you're prepared. So Saturday, you're preparing. The excitement is building.
You're not
for
eating
everyone.
all of the really good food.
You're smelling all
You're
this really
smelling.
good food, and you can't eat it. But it makes you super excited.
I love when we have lamb in our oven for like hours and our whole house just smells like lamb. And no one's eating any of it.
Yeah. So that then leads us to, well, I usually try to take a nap personally. And
I don't believe in sleep.
Saturday, you're young. Saturday, if I actually fall asleep, it's usually just resting my eyelids. And then my kids, I send them to bed at normal time because they need as much sleep as possible. So in the Orthodox Church, usually the service will begin at 11:30 p.m. Saturday night.
p.m.
And
the middle of the night.
And it's like 3 services back to back. And it lasts about 2.5 to 3 hours. Yes. So, and then, at midnight, everybody processes around the church 3 times with candles and singing Thy Resurrection. Continued.
So basically we're starting at 11:30 and we are slowly leading up to Christ resurrecting, which we started at 11:30 because usually around midnight is when that happens. And it's signified in the service by the priest bringing the light of Christ out to the congregation, which I don't know about you, but is like the moment of chills, because when you walk into the church at 11:30 at night, it's dark.
No candles.
Like,
yeah.
Dark. Like, there is usually like one light on in the entire church.
Not even
Just
a
so
light,
you
probably
don't,
just a candle.
like a candle, so you don't trip.
Yeah. Or maybe at the entrance, like the entrance door. That might be about it. So you know how to get into the door.
So you're walking in and it's silent with this one light and you're venerating the tomb, and then you're leading up to the resurrection, and it's dark out, and all of a sudden there's light, and the priest spreads this light throughout the congregation and is passed amongst the parishioners. And then we leave the church to process the church and sing and proclaim that Christ is risen and wake up all of the neighbors. And
the bells are
ring
ringing
a lot
the
of
whole
bells.
time.
And do you want to talk about what's happening inside of the church while everyone else is outside of the church processing and singing Christ is risen as loud as we can?
So usually inside then, there's usually a few guys that are breaking down the tomb, and somebody should be at the door to kind of tell the bell ringer when to stop ringing the bells. They're kind of cleaning everything up from Holy Week, because then we are entering officially the Pascha. And so in some parishes, they might sway the lampadas and the lights to represent like the earth shaking and, Christ resurrecting.
Everything joyous
yes.
you can think of. Yeah.
And so when you come back in, the lights are on bright. Everything is...
The tomb is not there.
Right. Because he's gone. He is risen.
He's risen.
And yeah, so then from then on, the hymns go from solemn to joyful and bright, and your priests will be running around throwing holy water or flowers or
yelling Christ is risen in 50 different languages.
Yes. It's, if you've never experienced it, it's definitely should be at the top of your bucket list.
It's one of those things that you can't just explain to someone.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be there to feel it. And
honestly, if you haven't been going through Lent and fasting and all of that and the Holy Week,
It's not the same.
You won't quite understand why everyone is so jubilant.
Yeah.
You will be like you'll ride the high with everyone
of everyone's energy,
yes,
all excited.
But you won't quite grasp it because you haven't been doing that 40-day struggle.
The excitement comes from the feeling that we have struggled with Christ and we have been preparing ourselves for this, and it's a long road of preparing for it, and then you finally reach that joyful moment. And my second child was born on Palm Sunday, and it was a rough year because
you went through
I had
Lent,
all of Lent and I had the joyful moment of having a baby on Palm Sunday, and then his baptism the weekend of how the 40 days fell was right after we stopped singing all of the Paschal hymns. It was kind of like the weird what just happened. Like, I was in Lent and now Pascha just like didn't happen, and because when you have a baby you're not in church, and then you're back at it. So I'm praying this year, because I'm due with this fourth child on bright Saturday, that the little baby stays in there until after Pascha.
So you get to celebrate.
So I can waddle my way into the church at 11:30 at night and celebrate with everyone.
Yes, that would be good. I remember feeling so bad for you.
I remember
so
texting
hard.
you and being like, can you just like send me a hymn, like something.
Just
send me like a snippet of a happy hymn. But it's a joyful occasion because I had a baby, but it was like you get halfway through the struggle and then here's your baby. You get a baby, not Pascha, but you do get a baby.
Yeah, right. Bittersweet.
Yeah. But Pascha is Holy Week. Sometimes parents aren't struggling. Like, they are struggling with their kids, but sometimes it's easier to figure out what to do. Pascha is like the most asked, what on earth do I do? I have children. Like, I have little kids. I have older kids. I have, usually once you get to like, double digits and up, 10-year-olds and older, it's not as difficult. They can typically handle
being
a late night service and being tired. And like it's because they understand it a little bit better of what's happening. It's typically the like, how do I handle having little kids under toddlers? How do I handle having the like toddler to 10-year-olds? Do you want to share a little bit about what that's looked like for your children when they were younger?
Yes. So for us, at the time of my firstborn, my husband had not yet converted. So he was fine just staying home with our son. So then I could go and I sing in the choir because he wanted me to be there. He wanted to be there, but he was okay with staying home in the middle of the night because I cannot have imagined trying to bring my firstborn to the midnight. He would have struggled. Like, it wouldn't have been enjoyable for anyone. So I don't think we ended up bringing him or the other children till he was like 8. And then, so again, my husband just would stay home, unfortunately. So he missed a good bit of the Pascha midnight services. So I give major props to people who bring their babies and toddlers to the midnight service, and they usually do amazingly well. I'm very surprised. So I think, if my oldest was 8, then my middle was probably around 6, and then my youngest was, I think, 3. So his first Pascha was 3. And he was a very different tempered child, so I had really no reservation about bringing him to Pascha at that point and being okay. I thought he would sleep. He didn't. He stayed awake the entire time.
I remember because that year my youngest was also 3.
Yes.
and I did not bring my youngest. And I was like, how is he awake?
He was awake.
And he was happy. And
yeah. But again, he's a very different tempered child than my firstborn at that age. So I wasn't surprised. Well, I was kind of surprised, but I knew I had more hope that he would handle it. I know some people might have family that can stay with their children, young children, or they go to their house and stay there. And then there's lots of people who bring their children and they do great. But again, it depends on your personal children and their behaviors and how you think they're going to handle the situation.
I think a lot of the questions people have is that they don't know how their child will handle it.
Yeah.
And so then they tend to lean on the side of like, well, maybe I just shouldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really for that. I am like, I'm pro the adults are very with it and we know what we just went through. I think the adults should experience Pascha. So like my take on it has been that if you've both gone through Lent and been preparing for Pascha and you have children, then I think that you should both go. If you think that your child won't be able to handle it, then if you have someone to leave them with, then do that. Mm-hmm. Like and I'm talking like, there's like these weird age gaps. So like to me, anytime someone has a child that's like under 1, I often tell them that I think it's going to be easier than they think it would be, like to bring a baby, because at least my babies, like they all slept in a carrier. So I would just like, you could strap them in a carrier and they would sleep. And I know a lot of parents do that and you just hold them and they sleep through the whole thing and they don't even know what's happening. Once they're like 1 to 3, 4, the like toddler ages, that's where it can get rough. If you don't think that they can make it, then try to find someone that you could leave them with so that you can both go to church. But if it means that one of you isn't going to get to church, then I think that there are ways around that might seem intimidating but will actually work. And sometimes that involves bringing like a little pack and play and putting it like in your narthex and putting the kid in there and then just standing nearby during the service. Or I know sometimes you just bring a blanket and a pillow and a sleeping bag and you let them sleep on the pew, under the pew, wherever they want to sleep at. If they get tired enough, they will fall asleep somewhere. I think my youngest, the first year that we brought him, he was 4, and he, I thought, was going to like sleep the whole time and didn't. He was just like, whoa, like he was like half asleep but like just taking it all in, and then he ended up sleeping in the next day and it really didn't mess up his whole life like I thought it was going to. You know, as parents, if you have your children on nice sleep routines, you're like terrified to do something out of the norm because you're like, what's tomorrow going to look like? And it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Like I think he just took a nap the next day. And the next year, all it does though is like when they first come and they're old enough to experience it, they look forward to it. Like they, even at 4 years old, my oldest like looks forward to it and is like, when's that time that we get to go to church in the middle of the night? They also look forward to it because they get to eat a bunch of food at 3 a.m. And I have pictures of him like shoving his face full of all of the random things that people were passing out.
There's an excellent book. Have you read Catherine's Pascha?
No.
Oh, it's so good. My boys love reading it, and we read it many times during...
It's a children's book?
Yeah, a children's book. But it goes through the Paschal service.
Yeah.
And yeah, we read it multiple times during Lent leading up to it. So it helps build the excitement for them. Yeah. And then they know what to expect too. So I actually gave it to my goddaughter for her first Pascha, so she would know kind of what to expect leading up to it. Because you don't know till you know, like until you're there.
I guess it's just like kids are more resilient than than I think the parents think they will be. Really, the roughest years, in my opinion, are like 2 and 3-year-olds because they like won't really sleep in a carrier, but they also sometimes don't want to sleep on
Other
a pew.
places, yeah.
So like for those couple years, if you don't want to bring them and you don't have someone to watch them, then maybe stay home. But I tend to lean towards the side of like, no, just bring them. Like they'll adjust much better than you think they will.
Yeah, again, it depends on the child and their specific needs. And
Yeah.
yeah, so then the Pascha service ends and
We feast.
we bless all the baskets. So that Pascha basket that you were preparing, you bring it and it gets blessed. Sometimes it gets blessed in the church. Sometimes it's at the hall. Just depends on your...
Outside.
Right, outside. It can be... There's different traditions revolving around that. And then, yeah, in our parish, we all feast. And you either eat out of your basket, or if people bring food, that can vary also on those different traditions locally. But everyone... after all the baskets are blessed, everyone celebrates and eats all their favorite foods that they've been fasting from. So, yeah, eating...
You have a big party.
Yes, it's a big party, and it's super fun, and you should definitely stay for it. I know if some people don't, I'm like, you're missing, like, not the best part, but, like, it's a good part.
It's a good part of it. You're missing the extra celebratory part of it.
The cherry on top. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, and then you might not be getting home till 4:30 in the morning, and that's
5.
Last year it was 4:30 at our house, and my rooster was crowing. I was like, oh, that's great.
That's nice when the sun is starting
Yes,
to come up.
good morning.
And yeah, but it's a beautiful experience. It only happens once a year, so immersing your family in it doesn't compare to anything else.
It is often said it's the closest you will ever get to experiencing heaven on earth. And it truly is. Unless you're celebrating Pascha on like Mount Athos. I've heard that's even more so. But us ladies will never experience that. So your local parish will be the closest you get to heaven on earth. And it's something we encourage every person to experience in their life. It's just incredible. I look forward to it all year long. And it helps me look forward to Lent. As much as like we all dread Lent and fasting. We're like, But I also look forward to that time. Because we know what the end is.
Yeah.
And then after that, you get home and everyone is saying, Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen to each other. That's how we greet each other. So you don't say hello or good morning. You say, Christ is risen for 40 days after Pascha. And we say it after and before we eat and before all the things. That's our proclamation.
Yeah. And then the celebration isn't over. We go home and we take a nap, hopefully. My kids, sometimes if they are awake, they end up watching some sort of Pascha documentary. And my husband and I take a nap.
Wise.
It has worked out well. Like if they go to sleep when we get home and then they are still awake at their normal time, we're like, we're just gonna watch a little documentary and videos about Pascha for an hour. We're gonna keep sleeping. And then we come back to church and we celebrate some more with Paschal Vespers on Sunday afternoon or evening, depending on your parish tradition. Do you want to share about that and leading into Bright Week?
Yes, so that is also a service that some people might not attend because you're tired after
It's the
Pascha.
shortest service of the entire year,
It's
actually.
the shortest service, and it's like so awesome. I don't know. Like, I love it so much. It's up there with a Holy Saturday.
Happy?
It's happy. You're just singing all, Let God Arise and all the best hymns. And there's still flower petals and things strewn all over the floor. So there was a party last night. Like there was definitely a celebration. And yes, it's short and sweet. And so oftentimes churches will then have an egg hunt afterwards for the kids, because for any of the kids who slept through the service or didn't get to attend, that's a good one to bring your children if they didn't make
Or your
it
spouse
through,
if they aren't Orthodox.
or or your spouse or your family and friends. That's also, non-Orthodox family and friends who you think the midnight service might be too much for them. This is a really good
expose them to a small glimpse of Pascha.
Yes. And then we have like a potluck dinner picnic. If the weather's good, we're outside.
We eat more meat.
And we're just eating all the leftovers and bringing more meat. And actually we used to rely on leftovers and then realized there wasn't any leftovers after Saturday night.
The year that I had to go to the store and buy like
a box of hot dogs
because we're like, we'll just all eat the leftovers on Sunday afternoon.
And people bring food, right?
And
everybody's tired. Nobody wants to make any more food.
Yeah. And I was like, there's no food here for us to eat. I'm going to go to the store down the street.
Yes, so we've had to personally for our parish, we've had to have hot dogs at least available.
Something.
To supplement whatever food people can scrounge around to bring. And so we all have, it's like a second celebration. And I know some people will have like a brunch when they wake up that day.
It's actually really weird because as Orthodox Christians, we go to church every single Sunday. So we're never home on Sunday mornings, ever, except for like when you have a baby.
Yeah.
So it's like this really weird feeling to wake up on a Sunday morning and it's like 9 a.m. and you don't go to church because you already went to church. Like you already had liturgy at 1 o'clock. So it's really interesting, actually.
Yeah. And you get to eat breakfast.
And you get to eat breakfast with bacon.
Yes. Yeah. So something your mother-in-law, our priest's wife, Matushka, she had said that their family would use the Pascha bread to make French toast out of the next day. So we kind of started doing that, and then we spread it with the cheese Pascha
and butter
and lots of butter and bacon and ham and all the things.
And then by Sunday afternoon, your stomach hurts.
So it doesn't stop there.
That's not the end.
Then you have Bright Week. In some churches, there's services every day in Bright Week.
A lot of churches, I think, at least will do Monday and Tuesday.
Right, Bright Monday. So that's another important service to go to, and that's when you can, after the service, they do the 4 gospel readings at the 4 corners of the church, representing the 4 corners of the earth. And so that's always fun too, as long as the weather is cooperating. We do it. Otherwise, we have to do it. Wait. And so that's also a good service to still go and take off school that day and
bring your kids.
Yes,
the kids like it.
Yeah, and then have another potluck after that of all the leftovers.
You can never have enough Paschal potlucks.
Yes. The awesome thing about Bright Week is the altar doors are all left open. So it's like the only time you actually get to see for women to see in the altar what's going on and watch the altar servers. And so it's
watch the altar servers who have a hard time standing still. You're like, oh, that's what they do back there.
Yeah. And I know it's almost sometimes can be bittersweet after Bright Week, because then I miss like seeing everybody
every day of the week.
Every day of the week, or at least like, once a week in the middle of the week for pre-sanctified or something. I get like, oh, I'm going to miss you guys. I'm only going to see you once a week now.
It's a great time of year to host people because you're out of the fast. It's kind of difficult to host people when you're in a fast, like even Orthodox people, because it's like no one's really celebrating.
Like your mother blessing, and we all had to make fasting brunch food, and we're all like,
we're all just going to eat muffins because we can't have bacon, so... But it's like once you've had Pascha, it's like now you can come over and we can eat a bunch of meat and like have a drink and celebrate and something joyful. And so that's a great time to fellowship with people, and the weather's usually getting nicer and everything just feels brighter.
Yeah, so instead of at the holidays or for Christmas, you know, we have holiday parties.
Yeah.
We need to have Pascha parties.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's
New
just add
tradition.
it to our list
You're gonna
of
have a baby.
things to do. I'm going to have a baby. You can bring me some meat.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful experience. The journey, the being Orthodox, just it immerses you in this life of Christ, and you're not forgetting any aspect of it. You're not just going, oh yes, we remember the resurrection. We go to church and we celebrate that Jesus rose from the dead. But we're saying there was a lot of struggle, and there was a lot of betrayal, and there was a lot of journey that led to that. And walking the path that Christ took leading up to the resurrection makes the resurrection that much more joyful and that much more of an experience for us,
A reality.
for us than if we just come to church on Pascha and go, yay, he's risen.
Right. Yeah. So we don't expect Holy Week and Pascha to go perfectly, especially with children. Have realistic expectations.
Like we said, when this is coming out, you're probably, for this year at least, in the middle of it. So
Yes. And every year will be different. And, you know, we just remember going from darkness to light and helping our children and our families experience that and see that and live that. And at the end, we all get to proclaim, Christ is risen.
indeed he is risen.
See, let me show you.
Thank you for tuning in to Veiled in Grace. We are an Orthodox women's lifestyle podcast. If you liked what you heard today, be sure to like our video, leave us a comment, share with a friend, and subscribe to our channel.
And let us know any future topic suggestions you might have, or tips and tricks of Holy Week and Pascha you might have, so everybody else can benefit from your experience. Or after Pascha, come back and share your experiences with us.
Let us know how it went.
Let us know how it went, what worked, what didn't, so we can all learn from each other. And we look forward to this blessed time with you all, experiencing and living Christ's resurrection together. So we hope you have a blessed Pascha. Christ is risen.
Pascha.